You're still here, huh? Time to get rid of the slow, old dead weight, Haga. Well, Haga, the misunderstanding is hilarious. A middle-aged nobody still at the bottom of the ladder. He thinks he can get sacked by David, the head of the product development department, and goes, "Is that really okay with you? Hey, old man, who do you think you are, Haga?" Exactly, Haga. The delusional ramblings of a perennial low-level geezer are truly comical. At that moment, I resolved to quit the company. And I swore in my heart, David and Joseph, I will never forgive these two despicable villains. My name is Samuel. I'm a middle-aged office worker, turning 52 this year. Born and raised in the countryside of US, I was always a bit of an odd child. Fond of inventing various things and dreaming about fun new inventions. In elementary school, I excelled in art, creating and presenting numerous outlandish works, receiving awards from the city and state. For college, I attended a local university in the Midwest, majoring in mechanical engineering. When it came time to work, I considered joining a major manufacturer in New York, but something in the job hunting process felt off. Instead, I chose to join Tenpo & Co., a smallish-sized enterprise located in a part of New Jersey. This felt akin to choosing a company in Ohio over a big city option. I joined for the company's relatively liberal culture and the fact that they were creating a product development department. Here, employees could propose ideas and develop new products, which I heard about during my job search. While large corporations have similar sections, I doubted I would have the chance to invent anything on my own there, mostly just assisting with others' projects. This expectation was met at Tenpo & Co. The newly established product development department was a boon for me, allowing for considerable freedom. The opportunity to immerse myself in developing new products and ideas was there from the start. Thanks to this, I have developed numerous products over the years, many of which became hits or were highly praised. Nearly 30 years have passed since I joined the company, and even past 50. My passion and dedication to my work have not waned. I often think to myself, I really made the right choice joining this company. They say everyone has a true calling, and I was lucky enough to find mine. However, a shadow was cast over my contented daily life at Tenpo & Co. The shadow I'm referring to was a man named David. Transferred from the sales department, he was the new head of the product development department. David, in his mid-40s, was quite cunning. He would change his attitude and manner of speaking, depending on the person. While you could say he's skilled at navigating social waters, he's a sweet talker to those above him, or anyone who could benefit him. Yet, he's arrogantly disdainful and openly nasty to those he sees as beneath him or of no benefit. Showering them with sarcasm and insults, he's a calculating and unpleasant person through and through. David, wanting to claim all the department's achievements for himself, clearly found me, a long-time member and de facto leader since the department's inception, to be a thorn in his side, openly expressing his dislike with snide remarks. "Samuel, you're almost a decade older than me, and still just a regular employee. Haga, aren't you embarrassed? How incompetent must you be to have advanced so little? You're such a loser, Haga." David, a careerist, constantly flaunted his position as department head, attempting to assert his dominance over me at every opportunity. Despite my contempt for David, I believed that engaging with him meant losing, so I chose to ignore him each time. I'd rather spend my time on product development than waste it dealing with such a person's nonsense. Perhaps irked by my attitude, David began to frequently interfere with and hinder my product development progress. I was usually juggling 2 or 3 product development projects, which I managed routinely. But I also had several long-term projects on the side. However, these long-term projects, which required securing production lines and were more extensive, were something I worked on bit by bit in between my regular tasks. One day, I was called in by David regarding one of these long-term projects. This product development project, you've been on it for 5 years and it's still not finished. Although he was my boss, being called out by David like this, who was 8 years my junior, irked me. However, I didn't show it and answered, "Yes, that's because it's a long-term project for a product that's still in the planning stages without a finalized contract. I'm managing several such long-term projects simultaneously." Without hesitation, he responded, "Just get it done now. Why isn't it finished after 5 years?" Well, the idea for this new product is already complete, and the specifications are mostly done. It's just that we haven't rushed it because it's a developmental product awaiting future contracts. To my surprise, David seemed interested when I explained the situation reluctantly. "The specifications are already complete." "Yes." "Then submit those specifications right away. This is an order from the department head." David's unexpectedly eager response caught me off guard. I had thought he was a careerist who only cared about numbers and had no interest in product development or my invention ideas. However, I should finish the regular contracted projects first. "Are you that interested in this long-term project?" When I asked him directly like this, he responded, "Yes, I am interested, so bring me all the specifications for this new product quickly. I'll find a company to contract with, and you prioritize finishing this product." I was honestly taken aback by his response. I never thought he'd show such interest in the content of a new product. However, if he was willing to pour his passion into marketing this new product, I reconsidered and decided to listen to him. "Understood. I've spent 5 years on this product, and honestly, it's a work I'm proud of. If you're going to support it to that extent, I'll make it a priority and rush the development from tomorrow, even though it means being busy." When I answered David with determination, he smiled satisfactorily with a grin. The next day, I handed over the specifications for the new product to David and started the final push on the long-term project, as if summing up 5 years of work. To secure a production line for this product, I went out of my way to find a factory. Thanks to my efforts, a local machine shop we had a long-standing relationship with agreed to produce it. Because I was working on finishing this long-term project in parallel with my regular duties, I only managed to get about 3 hours of sleep per night during this period, devoting the rest of my time entirely to work. David constantly asked about the progress of the prototype being made at the machine shop, and each time, I detailed the progress and explained it to him. Then, one day, as I went to the machine shop for a detailed meeting on the prototype as usual, I ran into an unexpected person. It was Joseph, a recent transfer to the product development department from sales. Joseph, a mid-level employee in his early 30s, had always been a favorite of David during his time in sales. He was rumored to have been moved to product development by David pulling strings with HR. I wondered why Joseph was here, but after exchanging greetings, he asked me with a smirk, "Samuel, how much longer until the prototype is finished?" "I think it'll be finished by the end of next week. Then, the plan is to have the boss, who has already received the specifications, inspect it and then distribute it to the retailers." At this, Joseph, holding back his chuckles, said to me, "Next week, huh, got it, Haga, but man, I hope that plan of yours works out, Haga." Leaving behind a particularly annoying sarcastic laugh, Joseph left the factory. "What's with that guy, weirdo?" I was puzzled by Joseph's inexplicable behavior, but soon got immersed in the final adjustments meeting for the prototype. The following week, thanks to the hard push, the prototype of the new product I'd been developing for 5 years was finally complete. Satisfied with its quality, I confidently returned to Tenpo & Co. with the prototype from the local machine shop. Entering the product development floor at Tenpo & Co. With joy, I headed straight for David's desk, deep behind the partitions. David was sitting at his desk, with Joseph standing next to him. "Boss, the prototype is finally complete. Here it is, please inspect it." The new product was a small device, but incredibly handy for use in cars, tents, or cabins. It was a product filled with my own proud technical ideas, not yet available on the market. As I enthusiastically placed the prototype on David's desk and said so, David and Joseph exchanged glances and snickered. Feeling puzzled, I repeated myself. "Please take a moment to examine and inspect the prototype, David." David then gave a shocking response. "No way, Haga." "Excuse me," I said, "I refuse to inspect or accept it, Haga." As David joked, Joseph standing beside him burst into laughter. I was utterly confused and said to David, "But David, you were the one who ordered me to rush this job, so I prioritized it to get it done." "What do you mean you refuse to inspect or accept it?" Then Joseph, placing something on the desk, said, "It means this, Haga." To my astonishment, what Joseph placed on the desk was almost identical to the prototype I had made at the local machine shop. The only difference was the color scheme. I was so shocked I nearly collapsed. "What is this all about?" Then, David answered me with a scoff. "Hahada, that's because this is a new product invented by the young and talented Mr. Joseph here. Made at the local machine shop, that's why we can't accept your knockoff, Haga." Hearing David's mocking answer, I instantly understood everything. Why did David rush me to submit all the specifications? Why did I run into Joseph at the local machine shop? Why did Joseph make those cryptic sarcastic remarks to me then? In an instant, all the dots connected in my mind. "So, you rushed me to develop the product for this? How despicable." As I glared up at David, he snorted with laughter and said, "You're still here, ha, time for this slow old nuisance to be fired, ha ha." This time, it was an outright dismissal notice. Of course, being only a department head, David had no authority to fire an employee. But, at that moment, I realized just how much my presence was being seen as an obstruction. I could feel the bubbling magma of dark revenge boiling up inside me. "Is that really okay with you?" I said, glaring intently at David. "Huh, what?" Then Joseph, pointing at me while trying to hold back his laughter, said, "Well, Haga, the misunderstanding here is hilarious. A middle-aged nobody still at the bottom of the ladder gets told he's fired by David, the head of the department, and goes, 'Is that really okay with you?' Hey, old man, who do you think you are, Haga?" Exactly, Haga, the delusional ramblings of a perennial low-level geezer are truly comical, Haga. I glared at these despicable two, and said only one thing. "Don't ever forget what you said just now." With those parting words, I picked up the prototype, turned my back on them, and left the office. They showered my departing back with their mocking laughter, but I didn't look back. That day, I submitted my resignation to HR, and quit Tenpo & Co., where I had worked for 29 years. It wasn't that I was complying with David's baseless recommendation to resign. It was a place I had dedicated half my life to, immersing myself in work, but under the new leadership of David, I realized there was no place for me anymore, nor could I do any meaningful work if I stayed. However, the moment I decided to quit, I made a vow. I will never forgive David and Joseph, these two despicable villains. After leaving Tenpo & Co., I immediately began preparations to start my own company. In fact, I had been preparing to go independent for a long time. Originally, I had planned to start my own business over 10 years ago, but my attachment and comfort in the product development department, which I had helped grow over the years, had made me consider staying on as a regular employee until retirement. But then David came in as the new department head, and I reverted to my original plan of starting my own business. I named the new company GZI Company and hired 3 employees for accounting and clerical work. Thanks to my track record and reputation from my time at Tenpo & Co., GZI Company, despite being a new venture, attracted many clients. This allowed us to have a rocket start, turning a profit from the beginning. This was because, before acquiring new clients and customers for GZI Company, I had a powerful trump card: patents. Actually, when I first joined Tenpo & Co. as a fresh graduate, I made a certain agreement with the company. The agreement was that the patent rights for products I invented and developed in the product development department would belong to me. In return, I didn't need the job allowances or promotions that other employees received. When I joined, the product development department was a newly established challenge sector with a high risk of failure. So the company agreed to this unusual contract despite my being a newcomer. This contract stipulated that while I was with Tenpo & Co., the distribution of patent royalty fees would be 80% for the company and 20% for me, but if I were no longer with Tenpo & Co., all patent royalty fees from the products I developed would go to me. So, now that I had left Tenpo & Co., except for those that had expired, the patent royalty fees for the products I had developed and patented now came to me as income. And 3 months after leaving Tenpo & Co. and starting GZI Company, I received a call from someone I didn't want to see or hear from. It was from David. When I answered the phone, David was panting and started ranting. "Hey, what the hell is this all about? That new product we started wholesaling to Mama's shop. Suddenly we're being sued for patent infringement, and when I checked, it turns out your new company is the one suing us. This is a joke." "A joke? That's my line. We developed it. What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" "Haga, that product took me 5 years to develop. You thought you could just take it because you got your hands on the specifications." When I counted, David's tone over the phone clearly became more apprehensive. "Do you have any proof? That product was developed by Joseph. It's clearly stated in the contract with Mama's shop." "Haga, no one's going to believe you just because you claim you invented it, Haga." Even after all this, David's shameless defiance left me exasperated as I replied, "That's why I sued. That product incorporates 2 new patent technologies I invented. And I've had the patents for those 2 technologies for over 3 years now. In other words, by wholesaling it without permission, you've committed a serious crime of patent infringement." After I explained the truth, David suddenly fell silent, grunting in response. I gave a final push to David, who was still silent. "What you vile scum have done is beyond the pale of human decency. Now, you're going to fully face the consequences." With that, I hung up the phone. The following week, I was summoned directly by Carter, the founder and CEO of Mama's Shop, and was at their headquarters. Mama's Shop is one of Japan's leading dollar stores, expanding its chain not only across Japan but also into North America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, a massive group. Carter is a charismatic entrepreneur who built up this empire all on his own. As I was led into the headquarters guest room, I saw the CEO Carter, his secretary and close aides, the current president of Tenpo & Co., and both David and Joseph present. After nodding to everyone and taking my seat, Carter began to speak. "Now that we're all here, let's get to the point. It's about the unfortunate matter concerning the product launched in our roughly 3,000 domestic and 1,800 international stores as a new product." Carter said this and then glanced around at everyone with a stern look. While I remained calm, David and Joseph were visibly pale and uneasy. Carter's chief secretary began to elaborate on the situation. According to him, the new product wholesaled by Tenpo & Co. was launched across all domestic and international stores, quickly becoming a bestseller due to its immense popularity. However, shortly after, a similar product was launched by Gutsian, a smaller but competitive dollar store chain, which soon outsold Mama's Shop products. Mama's Shop's buyers felt they were blatantly copied by Gutsian, and after protesting, were counterattacked with claims that Gutsian had the license for the patented technology used in the product, accusing Mama's Shop of being the actual copycats. Upon investigating, Mama's Shop found that Gutsian was indeed licensed to use the patent, and Mama's Shop's product was an unauthorized use, infringing on the patent rights. To avoid a credibility issue, Mama's Shop hastily halted the sales of the new product. The secretary explained things as such. Upon confirming with GZI Company, which supplied the product to Gutsian, we found out that Mr. Samuel, the representative, holds all the patents, and we've heard that the two gentlemen from Tenpo & Co. have already been sued for patent infringement, which is why we've asked you to come here. Hearing this, the president of Tenpo & Co. showed the most significant reaction. What? These two were engaged in such illegal activities? The president asked me, his face turning pale, genuinely unaware of the situation. Having inherited the company from the previous generation, the president's do-nothing attitude and incompetence were indeed problematic, but unlike David, he was not a bad person. I explained to the president on the spot about the misconduct and misappropriation carried out by David and his team up to this point. The president seemed genuinely shocked and glared at David and Joseph with a fierce look. David, what kind of irredeemable disgrace have you brought upon us? I urged the president to calm down and then added, Mr. President, please be assured, I have no intention whatsoever of suing Tenpo & Co. itself, Haga. It's strictly these two I'm after, David and his sycophant subordinate, Joseph. When I stated this clearly, the president's face showed visible relief, but the villainous duo of David and Joseph became enraged. Hey, don't get cocky, old man. You've already left the company, so we'll tear you apart without mercy. I replied, exasperated by their stupidity. That's my line, Haga. I'm not suing the company, so I'll be pressing criminal charges against you too. Hearing this, even David visibly paled and started trembling slightly. Carter, who had been quietly observing our exchange, then spoke up. I think I've got a grasp on the situation. David, you've really caused a mess. Even our capable buyers were fooled by you. How embarrassing, Mr. President. Sir. It's a shame about the new product being such a hit and becoming a bestseller, only for things to turn out this way. Sir, we are deeply regretful. I don't even know how to begin apologizing for my lack of oversight. I'm terribly sorry. The president said, bowing deeply. Watching this, I suggested to the president, Mr. President, there's no reason the product can't be revived, haha. Nay. The president made a surprised, high-pitched sound. Trying hard not to burst into laughter at his reaction, I replied, if your company formally enters into a license agreement with GZI Company, you are free and legal to use the patented technologies in that product. How about it? Would you consider a licensing agreement with us? The president's eyes sparkled as he nodded vigorously. Carter, witnessing this, smiled broadly and relievedly said, Great, great. If you two sign that licensing agreement, we can resume selling that product in our stores, Haga. Hearing this, the president, with tears welling up in his eyes, said, Thank you so much, Samuel. I truly appreciate your generous gesture. As the president repeatedly bowed and thanked me and Carter, Joseph remarked, PFFD, what a pathetic president, Haga. This is why old men are no good. Gotta be stronger, or you'll get walked all over by some eternal low-level geezer like Hearing this, the president, who had been all humility up till then, suddenly turned his face into a mask of fury and retorted to Joseph, "Joseph, will you shut up, you fool? You and David are about to be mercilessly prosecuted, facing the full force of the law, but before that, our company will deliver its own verdict on you two rogue employees. Be prepared." Reprimanded fiercely by the president, David turned pale and slumped down from his chair to the floor, lying prostrate. Seeing this, even Joseph realized the gravity of their predicament and, belatedly, weakly tried to explain himself to the president. Actually, I was just following orders from David, and it was all his idea to undertake those actions. Please believe me." I felt nauseous at Joseph's disgraceful attempt at self-preservation. David, previously lying dejected on the floor, suddenly looked up with a demonic expression and lashed out at Joseph for his vile attempt to shift the blame. "Joseph, how dare you make such a dirty defense? Weren't you the one all eager, saying, 'Make sure all that stupid old man's inventions are credited to me'? Don't think you can forget that, you piece of trash." However, before Joseph could make another ugly retort, the president intervened with a sharp rebuke. "Silence, you cowards! How much more disgrace will you bring upon yourselves? Never again claim to be employees of our company. You tarnish our name." The unexpected fury from the typically non-confrontational president marked the end of the meeting. The charismatic entrepreneur Carter gave me a knowing look, to which I responded in kind. Thus, the full truth came to light. Subsequently, Tenpo & Co. held an emergency board meeting to discuss the patent infringement issue and the fate of David and Joseph. It was unanimously decided that David and Joseph would be dismissed for disciplinary reasons, having caused immeasurable damage to the company and severely tarnished its public image. However, it was agreed that mere dismissal was insufficient punishment, and Tenpo & Co. also filed criminal charges against them for breach of trust. With criminal charges already filed by me for patent infringement, David and Joseph faced double legal troubles. Eventually, they were arrested, detained, charged, and faced 2 criminal trials. On the day of the verdict, they were sentenced to 5 years in prison, ending up behind bars. The deceitful duo never imagined they would face 2 criminal trials. Now burdened with the heavy cross of being ex-convicts, they must live out the rest of their lives. It was a fitting revenge for such despicable villains. Tenpo & Co., having formally entered into a licensing agreement with Gizai Company, was able to resume wholesale dealings with Mama's shop and restart selling that product. Although the product I wholesaled to Gutsian was essentially the same, I added an exclusive feature to the version sold by Mama's shop, leading to a resurgence in its sales and eventually outperforming Gutsian's product. Thus, by holding the patents and allowing competition through different sales channels, I achieved a great success. This arrangement was well received by the stores due to the synergistic effect on sales. Despite everything, I was able to continue doing what I love, developing products. I became the master of my own domain, turning misfortune into fortune. Despite everything, it seems my life has really turned out quite well. That's what I find myself thinking more and more these days.